So I bought this little X3 from my son from Big Toys Direct. Made a video of the initial install and then like a little initial review, and then started receiving a bunch of comments about, hey, does the steering with the remote control still work? Have you had any issues with it? Blah, blah, blah. At the time, hadn't had any issues with it, but now, of course, I ran this into this little stack of tires right over here, and now the steering doesn't work anymore. So I contacted Big Toys Direct, seeing if they sell spare parts, asking for a new steering motor. And they were super helpful, got back with me super quick through the email, just ended up calling me. And first they wanted to check and make sure that I was actually diagnosing the issue correctly. They're saying there's two common issues, one with the little receiver for the remote, which is located back here by the battery underneath the driver's seat, and then two, the actual steering motor, which looks like just one of the actual drive motors on each of the wheels. So you see that here in a second. So I believe it's at the actual steering motor, which I have a little spare. It was like $39.95, so 40 bucks. Pretty cheap for what it is. And we're going to be replacing that, and hopefully that fixes our issue. They're saying the way to kind of diagnose whether it's the actual receiver, which is the same exact price, 40 bucks as well, which is again located back here under the driver's seat, or the steering motor, which is up here in the front, is if you're clicking, I'll show you real quick. If you have the machine turned on, and then you have the remote, so you can see the remote works. But the actual steering isn't working. You can still steer manually with the steering wheel, so my son's still able to drive it just fine. But you might be able to hear down here, you can see the steering actually just did work a little bit. But you can hear that receiver receiving the signal from the remote control back here. So I don't think there's any issue. If the receiver's clicking like that, it should mean that that receiver is still good, and that it's actually the steering motor that's the issue. So let's get into it. All right, the only tools you're gonna need: a little Phillips head screwdriver. I think there's only like maybe 6 screws to take out, and then maybe just a little pair of needle nose pliers there's 2 cotter pins and washers that you need to take off. Let's get the steering wheel off. All right, you can see there's a little Phillips head screw right here. Slide the steering wheel off, be able to disconnect. I had this thing pulled apart previously just to make sure I was getting the right part. There will be right here, see if I can get it to focus, right on the end of this, I don't know, steering column, steering shaft, there will be a little washer right here with a cotter pin through it. So just take that cotter pin out. It'll be the same as the bottom that I'm about to show you. All right, once you have the machine turned over, right here is your second cotter pin. So either use your needle nose or your fingers. Just get that pulled out. Pull this washer off. Don't drop the cotter pin like I did. And then this whole shaft that I was talking about, get around the wires, will just pull right out. So that's why you take that cotter pin and washer off on the inside, so that you'll actually be able to pull that shaft right out. And then now it's just a matter of, I think there's one screw here, one screw here, one down here, one there, and then this wire is mounted right here to this little cover. This cover will pop off, and then you should be able to just pull the steering motor and unplug it right out. So I'll show you here in a second. Should just be able to pull your motor right on out, pull the wires out with it, compress this little piece, disconnect your steering motor, and now we'll have replaced with our spare that we got. All right, so we got our spare right here. Again, looks very similar to these actual drive motors. And then now we're just gonna repeat the process backwards, and then I'll show you the crucial step that I forgot before. on once you slide the shaft through, putting the cotter pin through the shaft inside the cab once you have everything connected down here. So I'll show you that. All right, so there's a bit of an order to this. The way I would do it, step number 1, connect your steering motor. So we have that connected. Now it's probably a good time to test to make sure this is actually working now. So we have our remote here. This little gear right here should be turning. So that is working, but I think there's some sort of other issue. So you can see the receiver's clicking. Hopefully you can hear that. But when I click the left, it's not turning the opposite direction. We're gonna go ahead and reinstall everything, show you the order, how to put it back together. And then if I can figure out what's going wrong with this and why it's not turning to the left, then I'll throw that in at the end of this video too. But again, there's a order that makes this a lot easier to put that back together. Connect your motor first, get it put back in place, make sure it's fully seated back in there and mounted flush with this angle on the bottom of the machine. And then definitely do this little cover. I'd put your screws in there because they're kind of hard to get in there first. Do this little angle right up against this little angle of the machine right here. So this needs to be facing the passenger tire. So go ahead and slide that over your steering motor. Make sure that's sitting nice and flush. We'll go ahead and put those screws in there. Alright, crucial next step, once you get that little plastic cover back over the steering motor, you're going to want to slide this tip of the shaft back in through the center of that steering motor and get that gear to line up with these little teeth right here. But before you get this fully seated into that gear, you need to put a washer on the back side of this shaft inside the cab before it goes through the back of the dash so that you can get the backside cotter pin and washer put on. So go ahead and get that slid through till right about there. And then you're gonna want to take one of your washers, see this, and slide it over the backside of that shaft. Slide that all the way down. And then you can go ahead and move your shaft back up. And start feeding it through the dash right there. So once you have the shaft placed back into the cab, you can turn this motor by hand to get everything to align correctly. So you want this little hook through that bottom plastic piece right there. You want this black piece seated fully into your steering motor, and then you'll place another washer right here and cotter pin through that little hole. Sorry, this part was too hard to film while I was doing it. Right here's the gas pedal, so we're on the floorboard, kind of looking at it upside down. Back of the steering shaft, put that little washer that you slid over before seating everything through, and then put that cotter pin right back through there. let's get this thing turned back on. So we got forward, backwards, that works the same. It'll turn right, still won't turn left for some reason. Alright, so appreciate you watching. Hopefully this helps. Let's address one other thing. So maybe your remote just isn't receiving signal at all. And then unscrew right here and here to loosen. Pull that off. And then I think the receiver is down beneath here. So there's just 4 Phillips heads, I think. Just unscrew that. Alright, so right here, this little loose piece that's down here that all these connections go to, it's just sitting in there loose. I believe that's the receiver. I have the link for this replacement part as well. So we might go ahead and buy the replacement part. Again, that's 40 bucks for this to see if that fixes their issue. I don't know, I'll call them. They're very helpful whenever you reach out as far as replacement parts and diagnosing the issue. So just give you a little look. Your blue and browns over here. Look at these connections just in case you need these as far as putting everything back together. So it looks easy enough. It looks like there's just 4 connections that go in there. I don't know, you might have to take this battery cover off, but it looks like that just slides out and you just connect everything and replace that. So hopefully this helps you if you're having remote issues. Kids should still be able to drive manually if they're able to steer on their own without crashing into all sorts of stuff. So I can fix this one. I'll throw some stuff in at the end of this one. So see ya. All right, so we got the receiver replaced, got everything buttoned back up. It just slides right back in there, and then put all the little plastic screws back in. And so the last step, I guess I can show you. So we got the steering working both ways. So I think it was just the receiver. Probably could have just replaced that at first, but oh well, this is working pretty good now. And so last step. So have the machine turned off. You'll need to repair your remote to the machine. So again, have it turned off, then hold this button down until it starts flashing. So it's ready to pair. You just turn the machine back on. Then you're good to go. So let's go have some fun with these things now.